Welcome to Project Management course. Whether you're a student stepping into the world of project execution or a professional looking to sharpen your skills, this course is your fast track guide to mastering the fundamentals of project management. In just 6 power-packed lectures, we'll walk you through everything you need to know from setting clear goals and building efficient teams to managing timelines, risk, and budgets. You'll also learn to apply industry standard tools and techniques that ensure your projects stay on track and deliver value. By the end of this course, you will have a solid understanding of the practical uh, know-how on how to plan, lead, and complete the project successfully. There is absolutely no fluff, and it is just a focused learning designed for real-world project execution. So, once again, welcome to the course. When we talk about project management, there are 5 things that you should know basically to have a understanding that you understood project management. So, those 5 things are: one, what are the different processes in managing a project? Second one is, what are the tools involved in each process? Third one is some a know-how of some tools like Prince or MS Project, etc. The fourth one is project management frameworks that are available like Agile, Waterfall, etc. Fifth one is negotiation. So if you master these 5 things, you can say that you understood project management. So to start the course, we'll start by understanding what is project and what is project management and how is project different from operations. So such questions. So project is a collection of interdependent, interrelated activities directed towards a common goal within the constraints of time, cost, resources, scope, quality, and risk. There are always 6 basic constraints that when we talk about project management. Those are time, that is the schedule of the project. Second one is cost, that is the budget of the project. Third one is resources, that is the money, material, people, machine, etc. Fourth one is scope, what part of the project and what's not part of the project. Fifth one is quality, outcome of the project that should be delivered within the requirement of a project. The sixth one is risk. We should have a thorough risk management of the project, and we should have a thorough understanding of what kind of risk could occur as we move on with the project. Because the more early that we identify a risk, the more uh, cost effective it is. There are 2 kinds of risk: positive risk that gives us an opportunity, and negative risk that is a threat to our project. Getting into a project itself is a risk as its outcome is always uncertain. Projects have finite resources. An example of a project is to acquire a market or client base, or maybe a construction project or a space mission, etc. Now, to answer the question, what differs uh, an endeavor as a project as different to an operation is that projects are unique. They are specific and they have a temporary objective. They have a lifespan and a life cycle. They need teamwork. Teamwork is inherent part of a project. They are single entity and they have an identity. Projects are subject to changes. That means, for example, in agile projects, uh, the scope of the project can change. It is subject to changes. Uh, Maybe they are also progressively elaborate, which means we don't have a complete picture of the end result of the project until we we reach the milestones. Certain milestones has to be complete so that we will understand how the project should go. Projects are interdisciplinary. They are made to order. Uh, there is a unity in diversity in the projects that we encounter. Uh, it can be either outsourced or it can be done in house. Uh, there is always risks and uncertainties when we talk about projects. Project management, as I told you, is an interdisciplinary area, which means it goes across functions. Maybe some of the functions, maybe finance department, human resource department, operations department. So it will project will goes across different functions. It is not limited to a certain disciplinary function. For example, it will not be constrained to an operation team. It will be affected. It will have its effect on all the departments. Uh, there is always a project trade-off matrix when we talk about selecting a project. So we will rate the six constraints of the project, that is time, cost, resources, scope, quality and risks, based on the high, low, medium scale. And we have to select the projects strategically to navigate the firm. Projects are fundamentally unstructured inherently because they are about uncertainty and variety. They are projects are unique and they are non-repetitive. The non-repetitiveness is something that differentiates a project from operations, because operations is always repetitive. Project management brings in structure to something that is inherently unstructured. So how to bring in this structure to something inherently unstructured? Through project management. That is through three pillars. One is process, second one is tools, third one is framework. So if we bring in proper process, introduce right tools, and bring in right frameworks to a project, that is what project management does. Some of the reasons why we need project management is that we need to plan and manage changes. Planning and manage changes is done by the change management board, change control board. This board takes care of whenever the client introduces a change for a project. We can classify projects into two heads, that is time constrained projects or resource constrained projects. Time constrained projects runs on a reverse clock, that is, in time constrained projects time is fixed but the resource is variable. In resource constrained projects resource is fixed but the time is variable. Perhaps we have a lot of other classification for projects, for example based on the size of a project, as a single simple project or a complex project. We can classify a project based on its work breakdown structure. We can classify it based on functionality of the projects. For example, this is an HR project, this is a finance project, etc. We can classify a project based on the outcome or the result of the project. Projects are successful if it's successful in project management and operation perspective. For example, a product did not gain attention of the market. That means that product failed in an operation perspective, but it was successful in a project management perspective. Uh, that that is something we call as a challenge project. Challenge project is something where either it is failed in operation or it is failed in project management. It is not successful in both. A failed project is a project that did not even take off, or it is a failure in project management and operations, both. So based on the outcome or result of a project, we can classify a project as a successful project, failed project, or a challenge project. So as I told you, a successful project is when the project is successful in a project management and the operation perspective. A failed project is when the project failed in both the perspective and maybe the project even did not take off. A challenge project is when the project was successful in either one of the perspective, that is, it was either successful in project management perspective or it was successful in operations perspective, but not both. Projects can be further classified based on the characteristics of the project as strategic, operational, or compliance project. Compliance project is also known as regulatory project. Strategic project is when the firm has to pursue a project to strategize the firm. The project might be of strategic importance to the firm. For example, the firm has to showcase itself as an expert in a certain technology. So it is pursuing projects that involves s- a certain technology. For example, buying and adopting a technology. Operational projects are projects that are needed for the running of the project, for the running of the firm. So there are some projects that are needed for the firm to thrive or survive. So such projects are operational projects. Another category is compliance projects. There is no option here. For as far as a company is concerned, a company must take care of the compliance projects because there is a legal binding to the company that it has to pursue these compliance and regulatory projects. For example, waste treatment plan in a hospital. There is no option for the company to not pursue a compliance project. It is mandatory. Therefore, when we prioritize these categories, compliance project is first. There is no option. These are statutory projects. Then priority comes to strategic projects. Then after strategic projects, the priority comes to operational projects. Now, when we talk about projects, there are three basic questions that we should answer. Why should we run a project? What we try to do? What are we trying to do in a project? And how we should do the project? So these questions are answered by these three key terms. The objective is a key term that answers why we should run the project. Deliverables is the answer to what we should try to do. And milestones is the answer to how we should do the project. All milestones are activities, but all activities are not milestones. Milestone is a significant contributor to completing a project. If you miss a milestone, you won't complete the project on time. Objectives can be classified into two as primary or secondary uh, based on the priority of reasoning, etc. Based on the priority of reasoning and why we should complete the project. There will be a primary objective to a project and also a secondary objective to a project. Another classification of objective is must objective and want objective. Must objective is the mandatory reason to complete the project. Want objective is something that is not must to complete, but something that we intend to complete. Further, based on the functions, we can classify the objectives as maybe a project will have a financial objective, an operational objective, or maybe maybe human resource objective or something like that. Based on the functions, we can classify objectives. It will have an objective. It will have a social objective. It will have a objective to affect the company's image, etc. Deliverables are outcomes from a project. There are also the same classifications that I told for objectives also applies to deliverables. Now, this talks about what makes projects different. So there are characteristics associated with each project, like soft skills or hard skills. A project might require more soft skills over hard skills, while another project might require more hard skills over soft skills. Uh, can be based on authority and responsibility. Uh, Projects are temporary, as I told you. Projects have both routine and unique characteristics. Operations consist of ongoing work needed to ensure that an organization continues to function effectively. Uh, the characteristics may be depending on the level of certainty and uncertainty also. It depends on the variability of the project, the multiple simultaneous constraints, the six constraints, the level of six constraints, the ease of decision making, etc. Course is designed based on the PMBOK framework. So whatever I told you before and whatever I'm going to tell you afterwards is based on the PMBOK framework. There are perhaps other frameworks that I'll talk about in the future sessions. Now let's talk about the project life cycle. There are two types of life cycle. That is One, project life cycle and technology life cycle. I'm not talking about technology life cycle here. I'm talking about project life cycle. Broadly, there are 6 stages in project life cycle. They are initiation phase, planning phase, execution phase, monitoring and control phase, and closeout phase. Uh, Planning phase can be further divided as macro planning phase and micro planning phase. Now let's talk about each in detail. For starters, pre-initiation phase is the phase where we do idea generation, conceptualization, feasibility analysis, etc. So input for the pre-initiation phase is a business need. There should be a need to pursue a project. Output of the pre-initiation phase is a detailed project report, also called as DPR, which is acronym. Now, the next phase is initiation phase. Initiation phase is when the clock starts ticking. That is, from the day we uh, are in the initiation phase, we are starting the project. The input for the initiation phase is a DPR, detailed project report, and the output is a project charter. So we will be ready with a project charter by the end of the initiation phase. Project charter is a foundation to build a project. Now the next phase is planning phase, which is divided into micro planning and macro planning phase. The input for the planning phase is a charter, a project charter, and the output for from the planning phase is macro plan and a micro plan. So now let's talk about what is involved in micro and macro plans. Activities under macro planning include goal setting, needs assessment, situation analysis, resource planning, timeline development, activity mapping, that is to outline the key task of each phase uh, to the activities, task to activity mapping, uh, then implementation strategy, monitoring and evaluation, risk management, etc. The contents of micro plan includes work breakdown structure, schedule, resource planning, budget plan, scope plan, quality plan, procurement plan, communication plan, risk management plan, etc. So, in other words, I can say that these things like work breakdown structure, scheduling plan, uh, budget plan, scope plan, procurement plan, communication plan, these are all the outputs of micro plan. And the other way around, the macro plan aspects like timeline development, activity mapping, implementation strategy, resource planning, etc., are the outputs of macro plan or the macro planning phase. Next stage in the project life cycle is execution, and the input to the execution phase is a macro plan and a micro plan. The execution phase delivers the deliverables. So the output of the execution phase is deliverables. Now, monitoring and control phase is between the execution phase and the closeout phase. Closeout phase is the final stage in the project lifecycle. The closeout stage takes input as deliverables. So deliverables, that is the output of the execution phase, is the input for the closeout phase. And the output of the closeout phase is the customer acceptance of the deliverables. Now, this much being said, I would like to put forth an activity before you. You can refer to the activity in the description of this video. Under the artifact section, the first artifact is a Dharavi case. This Dharavi case is something that you have to read through and list down all the activities that are done in that case, that are mentioned in that case, as under each of these project lifecycle phases. Now, moving on, the collection of related similar projects managed in a coordinated way constitutes a program. Program is a collection of projects that are managed strategically to obtain synergy in benefits and control not available through managing projects individually. Portfolio is a collection of projects or programs grouped together for pursuing objectives focused on a specific business strategy. It's a collection of projects or programs grouped to meet the strategic business objectives. We have already talked about the project customer trade-off matrix. What is the trade-off matrix that relates to the six constraints of the project? We can categorize a project according to the levels of these six constraints. Estimation in a project may uh, follow a pyramidal estimation. Uh, it can be a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. When I talk about estimation, it can be estimation on any of those six constraints. It can be a cost estimation, it can be a resource estimation, it can be a time estimation, etc. Uh, when we talk about the top-down approach, the management fixes a certain number of threshold. For example, the management will fix a budget and a certain number of resources to be used or dedicated for a project, and that numbers will flow down uh, to each phases, and that will determine the quality of each individual's work in the project. For example, in a top down approach, the management fixes that a project is having a budget of 10 lakh, and then the project manager distributes that uh, budget, that is 10 lakhs, to further down to the project life cycle. Maybe he will estimate 1 lakh for initiation phase, 2 lakh for planning phase, and 3 to 4 to 5 lakhs for execution phase, and so on. Similarly, they might give a threshold for the quality and number of resources that each phase in the project life cycle might require, etc. A bottom-up approach is an ulta of top-down approach. That is, we define the quality standards that each individual is supposed to deliver, and the number of resources that each phase require for each activity and each task require, the number of resources that each activity and each task require. We will determine the cost incurred that will incur for each activity and task, and further we will sum up all these costs and say to the management that, all right, the project require 10 lakh budget, and it require this much number of resources, man resources, machine resources, and all these uh, different types of resources. We will sum up from the bottom to the top. That is called as bottom up approach. This slide talks about when to use top down approach and when to use bottom up approach. This it talks about the strategic decision making. For doing a strategic decision making, we will have to follow a top down approach. For a cost and time important, if the cost and time is important for the project, then we have to look about uh, doing a bottom up approach. For a highly uncertain project, we will have to do a top down approach. The project is having an unstable scope, the top down estimation is preferred. The customer wants more details, or if it's a fixed price contract, uh, we will have to do a bottom up estimation. We'll talk about different kinds of contracts later, don't worry. For internal or small projects, we might have to do a top down approach. So these are the different approaches in estimating the project. This slide talks about the organization readiness for pursuing a project. What determines if an organization is ready to take up a project? Some of the factors are the culture of teamwork, effective communication, empowered decision making, creative and innovative thinking, risk taking ability, seeing the big picture, then the leadership at different levels, the adaptability to change, planning skills, process approach, the right skills, competencies. the stakeholder oriented thinking, the direction setting, etc. Stakeholder is somebody who got some interest or stake in the project. It can be a negative stakeholder or it can be a positive stakeholder. Depends on whether the person is having a negative interest or is having a positive interest towards the project. A stakeholder can be a negative stakeholder or a negative interest also. For example, somebody is losing land or a livelihood due to the project. You can't manage all the stakeholders in the same way. What you see on screen is the steps to manage stakeholders. First, we have to identify all the stakeholders in the project. We need to classify them. We need to analyze them all, and we need to prioritize the stakeholders. After that, we need to come out with specific stakeholder management plan for each stakeholder. Negative stakeholder is a stakeholder who is adversely impacted by a project, whereas a positive stakeholder is someone who is benefited from the project. Stakeholders can influence the destiny and outcome of a project. They decide if the project is on or off. Example, a sponsor. A sponsor is the most powerful stakeholder. Regulatory agencies, political system, and the government, financial institutions are all important stakeholders in a project. A stakeholder can delay or challenge a project. We can classify stakeholders based on the power he has in decision. For example, sponsor is the most powerful stakeholder. If he withdraws, then the project collapses. We can classify stakeholders by proximity, that is the internal versus external. We can classify stakeholders based on the urgency level in the project. We can also classify stakeholders as active or passive. Active stakeholders are those stakeholders who are involved to a large extent. That is, those stakeholders are highly visible and they have to communicate and they have to be communicated on the various stages and progress of the project. Passive stakeholders are not involved or but they will get benefited. They might not need the communication on each phases or the various stages or progress of the project, but they need the benefit and they are not much involved. We can also classify stakeholders as drivers and facilitators. Drivers are the stakeholders who run the project, while facilitators are the stakeholders who creates the environment for the project, and the facilitators stakeholders will take the backseat. We need to always prioritize as negative stakeholders. The destiny of the negative stakeholders. The customers and the sponsors are the most important stakeholders in any project. They are the powerful stakeholders. External stakeholders are not always involved. Passive stakeholders, they can make challenges. Urgent stakeholders are involved on a timely basis. We already discussed that program and portfolio are both combinations of projects. But what is their difference? Combination of projects with differing nature of objectives constitutes a portfolio, while combination of projects with same or similar nature of objectives constitutes a program. So this is the classification of stakeholders as positive or and negative stakeholders based on the power, the level of urgency, active or passive, drivers or facilitators, impacted by process versus results, etc. These are the various project management knowledge areas. uh, Project integration management, project scope management, project time management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communication management, risk management, procurement management. According to PMBOK, project management process group is a logical grouping of project management processes described in the book collectively. These process groups are required for any project and have clear dependencies and must be performed on the same sequence on each project, independent of the application area or the specifics of the applied project lifecycle. So this is how each phase in the project lifecycle is envisioned in the PMBOK Book of Knowledge. Initiation phase is defined as the stage that defines and authorizes a project or project phase. Planning phase is a stage that defines and refines objectives and plans actions to achieve objectives. Execution phase directs and manages people and other resources to accomplish project work. Monitoring and control phase collects data and checks progress to determine any needed corrective actions. Closure phase formalized acceptance of the project outcome. And it is a phase that ends the project. These are the PMBOK knowledge areas. For example, scope management, which is something that determines all the work and only the work necessary for the project completion. Uh, it 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 bristles of the unscoped areas in the project. It is next is time management that defines and sequences and estimates the duration and resourcing work activities, as well as developing and controlling the schedule. Cost management is about planning, estimating, and budgeting the control cost. It's about controlling the cost. Quality management is about quality planning, assurance, and control. Human resource management is about acquiring, developing, and managing the project team. Communication management is about generating, collecting, disseminating, storing, and disposing of timely and appropriate project information. Risk management is about risk identification, analysis, response planning, and monitoring and control. Procurement management is about purchasing or acquiring project and services as well as contract management. Integration management unifies and coordinates the other knowledge areas by creating and using tools such as charters, project plans, and change control. Now, talking about the project assumptions, uh, why do risk and scope looks odd in as a constraint for a project? Any risk is analyzed in terms of two parameters: probability of risk, which can be rated as low, medium, or high, and impact of risk, that can also be rated as low, medium, and high. Now, minor risks are risks with low probability and low impact. Medium risks are either having high probability or high impact, but not both. Either probability or impact is high, but not both. Major risks are risks with high probability and high impact. Major risks are also called as critical risks. Risk is the largest in a project, either at initial or at the end phase. At start, the risk is high because you invest time and resources to something which is uncertain in result. At the end, the risk is high because project gets stuck at 80 percentage because you cannot go back, because all unidentified risks come to you at the last phase in the wrong time. Risk always comes from behind and gives you a surprise. Now, what can be called as a very strong risk identification? A very strong risk identification means the probability of risk will reduce as you move forward. The cost of managing an unidentified risk increases exponentially. The project may have to be called off due to an unidentified risk. In other words, we can say that the cost of risk increases exponentially as we identify it further and further in the life cycle, further and further towards the closure in the life cycle. Projects follow a concept called as progressive elaboration. There is no project where you start it only after you get to know complete working of the project. Every project has a specific objective and deliverable. Every project is unique, and projects are about managing changes. As we start a project, certain assumptions that we make for a project are based on risk, autonomy of the project, how much autonomous the project will work, uh, the amount of authority the project and the project manager will have, the control and the sponsorship of the project. It's always easier to make changes in a project in the earlier part. Every projects are made to order, and every project carry risks and uncertainties. A quantified uncertainty is a risk. A risk is quantified through probability. Projects involve high level of outsourcing. Example, conceptualization of an automobile design. Projects are singular entities and every project has a standalone identity. Projects have a definite lifespan and all projects are about teamwork. There is limited role for individual brilliance. Projects are about unity and diversity, and objectives and deliverables are binding forces in a project. Now let's talk about why projects fail and why projects succeed. Project management brings in structure to something that is inherently unstructured. It brings in visibility to problems and it leverages scarce problems. First, we will talk about why projects fail. Failure to align with project objectives, poor scope, failure to align organizational objectives with project objectives, lack of scope clarity, unrealistic expectations, lack of executive sponsorship, lack of project management, scope gets progressively elaborated, unrealistic expectations of customers and clients, lack of direction and leadership. These are some of the reasons why projects fail. As I know, charter will say what's possible and what's not possible clearly, but some customers and clients will set unrealistic expectations on top of that. Some other reasons why projects fail include inability to move beyond individual and personal conflicts. That is, a stakeholder's interest varies in project. Conflict is a common reason for uh, project failure. A conflict can be two types: a task conflict or a relationship conflict. Task conflict is something that you don't agree on a method or approach of doing something. Stakeholders might not agree with certain processes or how certain things are done in a project. That is called as a task conflict. Whereas a relationship conflict is purely interpersonal conflict. As a project manager, we should not have a tolerance to relationship conflict. There should be zero tolerance encouraged for relationship conflict, but we can have a high tolerance encouraged for task conflict. Politics can lead to project failure. Not enough having not enough resources in a project for completion. Uh, for example, we can have two types of constraints in resource. Those that namely adequacy challenge and an availability challenge. For example, you want 100 people but you have only 50 people. That is called as adequacy challenge. But uh, you have 120 people but you don't have them available at the need. That is called as availability challenge. Availability challenge result in compromises on requirement. Other challenges uh, for a project failure, uh, other challenges that contributes to project failure includes not having enough time for the project, not enough time for the completion of projects, project expectation is unclear, no system to manage changes, changes in project are not understood or agreed upon by all parties involved, not planning, no adequate time used for project planning. Always remember that time saved while we plan the project, when that time saved ripples down to the execution stage, we will waste a lot of time. Time lost in execution uh, will be uh, exponentially related to the time saved in project planning. Other reasons for project failure include stakeholders disagree on project expectations. If we wait for if we think that I'll only start a project after getting a perfect plan, that's not going to happen, because projects are uncertain and inherently unstructured. A weak project charter can also lead to project failure. Now, why do projects succeed? If we take care of all these things that I mentioned about why projects fail, and if we tackle all of them, we, our project will succeed. Creating a deliverable agreed by all parties will lead to the success of a project. The following aspects will lead to the success of a project. Uh, Output pleases the customers. If the output of a project pleases the customers are able to use these outputs effectively. If the project is completed on schedule and on budget, if the project is completed without heroic, we are not looking for heroes, we are looking for teamwork. People who work on project learns new skills and refines existing skills. Organization also learns as you learn, gives positive results in business. If a project gives positive results in business, if a if project has a strong charter, a good communication plan, a good project executive sponsorship, and the right mix of team players, if the project is making good decisions on a timely manner, if the project is having a good communication, if the project is having a united team for a common goal, that is when the project succeeds. There is always somebody who we can identify as a reason for project failure. We talked about project assumptions. What were those assumptions? Risk will be always there, and will be there should be autonomy. There should not be an interference. There should be authority to make decisions on time. There should be right controls, checks and balances in a system. There should be somebody who sponsors the project. As we discussed, why do projects succeed? Project sponsorship at executive level, good project charter, strong project management, the right mix of team members, team players, good decision making structure, good communication, team members are working towards a common goal. Those are the things that let a project succeed. But now, why do projects fail? Failure to align projects with organizational objectives, poor scope, unrealistic expectations, lack of executive sponsorship, lack of project management, inability to move beyond individual and personality conflicts, politics, not enough resources available for project completion, not enough time has been given for the project, project expectations are unclear, changes in the scope abruptly that are not understood or agreed upon by all the stakeholders. Stakeholders disagree regarding expectations of the project. Adequate project planning is not used. So those are the reasons why projects fail. Now, who should be a project manager? A project manager should be a person who shows up their leadership in that organization to drive the, to strive that organization to success towards strategic initiatives. He should be efficient in communication. He should be able to control finance, and he should be able to control the team. He should be able to control uh, and run the project. He should be able to manage and arrange everything so that the project runs smoothly. He need not be a technical savvy. He can be from any background. He should not be politicking. He should be able to build the team. He should praise the team in public and punish them in private. He is like the superhero. He should be able to manage conflicts. He should be able to manage issues without things getting out of control. He should be able to run the project after all. That's the project manager. During the planning phase, we need to select the right candidates for the right players for the project. We need a complementary skill set. We need to align the team members should align with the work breakdown structure, and they need to have a blend of technical and business taste. Uh, the four stages of team development is forming, storming, norming, and performing. Uh, the normally, ideally, the stages should go like after forming, it should reach storming stage, storming, then norming, and then performing. So forming stage is when the team members just meet and start working on a project. Storming stage is when they brainstorm on various aspects and share their own ideas. And this is the stage where they will enter into conflicts and resolve it. And this is, the norming state is where there they will establish unwritten protocols and norms within themselves, and they'll work according to they will know each other better and they will work according to their uh, standards. And after norming stage they will work in a performing stage. This is the stage, this is the perfect stage where the project will be done, the work will be done then and there. This is the ideal state, but in reality, projects might revolve around forming and storming. Then the performing, it might reach from forming to performing, etc. The reality might be different, but that will depend on each individual and the team that you're working on. If you're working on large projects, we might even need to consult with some consultants uh, who can address the organizational issues. They should be able to provide some team foundation. Uh, whenever we work with a team, uh, whenever we are going to conduct a meeting, there should be a proper meeting management. There should be well developed ground rules, and there should be a facilitator, reporter, the reporting structure. There should be meeting times mentioned. There should be a timeline and agenda that should be shared in the meeting. uh, Meeting should be conducted properly. uh, when I say ground rules, I'm basically talking about the start and end times, the agree to debate issues. They should be mentioned in agenda, what all kind of issues are to be debated in the meeting and who all are invited for that. The reporting structure, there should be an agreement that they will bring all the issues to the table. uh, According to researchers, there are a certain number of profiles. There are some profiles that are established according to researchers for each team members, that are not fit to work in a project. So these are the following character profiles for team members are those that are not preferred, or those are not fit for working in a project. First one is the tank. Tank is a person who dominates a discussion or issue by brute force or personality, and when they are present, they speak as an authority. When dealing with a project and defining new solutions, these types of people can be destructive to the process of open discussion and consideration of the alternatives. Another character profile is the grenade. The conversation will be going along fine, and all of a sudden a team member lopes out of discussion, ending a comment. Next character is the thing they know it all. It's much like a tank, but they speak with authority and confidence that they have a belief that they know everything, but in fact, they might not know everything. Next is a maybe person. This is a person who cannot commit to any position or issue. They take refuge in ambiguity. Next is a no person. This person says no to anything that is put towards him. And next is a sniper. This is a destructive force in a team. The sniper tends to negate comments within the team that uh, and attack the idea. He's a person who always turns down all the ideas in the team blatantly. Next is a yes person. He doesn't say no. He doesn't know to say no. He says he's okay with everything. He's a person who is very less negative and agreeable to everything. He doesn't have any objection to anything. Next is a traitor. He might speak very little in meetings or sometimes disagrees and spends times out of meetings lobbying for alternative positions and arguing decisions made by team. He's a person who doesn't speak in the team but speaks outside of the team and snipes you from behind. Next is the end rounder. He's a person who goes around team and project manager to another supervisor or administrator or complains, and he lobbies or takes alternative positions to team. Next one is uh, yes, next one is it's not a profile. That's all with the profile. Now it's a best practice on providing feedback to the team members. We need to praise the good things in public and punish the or tell the improvement points in private. If something went bad, we need to call the person in private and talk about it. These are some best practices for the project meeting management. It's a project meeting template that we can follow. Uh, these are some issue management guidelines. Issue is a point or matter in question or in dispute, or a point or matter that is not settled and in under discussion or over which there are opposing views or disagreements. There should be a issue log in a project, which is a living document, and it should say when and how the issue occurred and how we can resolve it. It should talk about the benefits and the impact it can cause. Uh, the template of an issue log is also here. Action item and event. Uh, there will be usually reflection meetings and uh, project reflections in a when we are doing a project. Uh, those meetings are called project retrospective in agile language. Uh, in such meetings, we have to consider the opinion of each team member and ask for their action items, what went right and what went wrong. Consider the action items, and all the actionable items that are legitimate needs to be uh, taken into account and practiced further. Before starting with organization capability, I would like you to go through the Titanic video shared in the this video description under the artifact. You can find the Titanic video in this as a second artifact in this lecture description. Uh, as you see the video, please note down the major project management blunders that you can identify from the Titanic project. Please pause this video and have a look at the video. You can open a new tab and see that video. Major drawbacks that you can see in the project management video of Titanic is that there was a compromise on functional requirements like safety for non-functional requirements like luxury. All the tests were fudged and validation was not done in Titanic. Business pressure was overriding everything else. As you can see that the sponsor wants changes in design. His presence was visible throughout the project, putting pressure to the employees and stakeholders. Assumption was unsinkability, but it was assumed everything is fine. But tests and proper documentation was everything was fudged. Poor risk management. There wasn't a disaster recovery plan. All feedback systems were compromised. All the wireless were busy with commercial transactions when warning messages came. Exactly same indicators was there in the previous project, Olympic maiden voyage project, but the possibility of recurrence of these issues were neglected. Even though Olympic voyage ship was damaged and a huge resource was allocated to it to repair it, Titanic's launch timeline and launch date were unchanged. There was a very poor stakeholder management in Titanic's case. Net, Next, let's move on to the type of organization structure. There are three types of project organization structures based on the levels of hierarchy in an organization and how decisions can be made, the bureaucracy of decision making, how difficult and how easy is to make a decision regarding a project. Based on that, there are three types of project organization structures. Uh, Three types of organization structures. First one is functional organization structure. Second one is project organization structure, and the third one is metrics organization structure. Functional organization structure is a structure where functional team runs the project. It is the uh, kind of organization structure where functional manager is having the highest say, highest priority, and highest power in taking decisions about a project. The advantages of functional organization structure is There is functional expertise. Functional team takes ownership to transition the project from operations to functional team takes the ownership to transition the project from project phase to the operation phase, that is operationalization. Functional team takes the full responsibility. Uh, there is a collaborative decision making, as the functional manager will not do cannot do everything all alone, because he have to consult with all the experts before doing making a decision. Functional organization structure comes with disadvantages like projects won't get priority. Decisions might be will be bureaucratic. Uh, it will be hierarchical, bureaucratic. Uh, there will be a lot of levels for the decision making. Uh, Project won't get the priority. Uh, Nobody is solely responsible for a specific project uh, in functional structure, and also there is slow decision making. Uh, it's a concept like there are many projects in under a function, and a single project is just one among the many projects that they are handling. So the priority is distributed. Next is projectized organization structure. It's also called as a pure project structure. Uh, Project is done by a core team in this structure. The entire life cycle of a project is done by a core team. They don't have other job. Coming to its advantages, uh, performance. This kind of organization structure, project organization structure, will have a quick results, quick decision making. There is a higher focus on the project because they are handling only this project. So project is having a higher priority. Results are obvious and not at all bureaucratic. It is not a bureaucratic process. Decision making is fast. Disruptions are handled very well, and it's there is perfect accountability, and the project manager is responsible for everything. It comes with disadvantages like there is less functional expertise. Project manager is handling all the things, so there is no much space for functional expertise. Project is run by franchise and wins and fancies of the project manager. The functional experts are not much involved in this. They are involved on a timely basis. There is very little buy-in from the decision for the decision making. There is less. It is less democratic. Project manager decides everything. Nobody takes responsibility for operationalization. There are two steps for there are two uh, you know phases for the project. One is the project management and the other one is operationalization. So in this projectized structure, nobody is responsible for operationalization of the project. Transition from the project to the operation, that is called as operationalization. Now conflicts and opinions are handled properly. A projectized organization structure is much more centralized and is less collaborative in decision making. Now, moving on to the metric structure. Metric structure is where the project is run by core team dedicated to the project. Here you onboard functional team members at the right time in the project. It comes with advantages like the functional expertise. We will have the right mix of project leadership and the functional expertise. Functional experts are consulted in decision making. Before taking any decisions, they are consulted. Operationalization of the project is more easy, and there is some accountability in operationalization. No compromise is made on speed and focus of decision making. It comes to this picture that you see is a matrix organization structure where we have a management of projects that and under which a lot of project managers work under different projects, and these project managers depend on all these functions like marketing, operations, finance, and services, and all these services might have its own hierarchy of people from vice president to employees. So the advantages of metrics structure is that the functional expertise is there, then the experts are consulted, decision making is more collaborative, operationalization is taken accountable, and there is accountability in that, and there is no compromise in speed, etc. Based on the power concentration in metrics organization structure, project organization structure is divided into three, as strong metrics, weak metrics, and a balanced metrics. Strong metrics is where project manager has more power. Weak metrics is where functional manager has more power. In both project strong metrics and weak metrics, there is only one power source. The other center is other power center, either it is project manager or the functional manager is passive. It's not the high priority. It's not considered higher priority. In strong metrics, project manager has the higher priority in decision making for that project. In weak metrics, functional manager takes up that role. Project manager is not having that priority. In a balanced metrics, both have equal power. It's almost dangerous. Uh, in balanced metrics, project manager and the functional manager has equal power in decision making. They are equally responsible for project and they are equally equal in power concentration. They both have the leadership and they both have the same level of leadership in steering a project. Stages of metric structure, it's conflict prone. Projects have two different power centers. So whenever there is a two different power centers, it is conflict zone, conflict prone. And instructions come from two sources. Project manager is there and a functional manager is there. Based on that power concentration, further this metrics organization structure is divided into three types: strong metrics, weak metrics, and balanced metrics. I'll talk about this shortly. Organizational culture can be defined as a set of formal and informal practices shared among the members of organization. It's a set of values that may be personal standards that influence judgments and interaction with others. It may be an organizational goal, etc. That's called as an organizational culture. This organization culture is influenced by members' identity, team's emphasis, whether it is run by an individual brilliance or a teamwork, uh, whether it's having a independent versus interdependent. Does the team work in interdependent fashion or each individual work independently? Uh, it's also influenced by control. Is it having a loose control or a tight control, micromanagement, all kind of that control? Uh, then it also depends on the risk tolerance, how much risk the firm is willing to take. Then it also depends on the reward criteria. The performance is the rewarding based on performance or any other criteria. It is also the organization culture is also influenced by the conflict tolerance. How much tolerance does the organization have for relationship conflict and task conflict? The culture is also influenced by the means versus end orientation. Does when a task is assigned, is the organization concerned about the means of achieving the task, or is it just concerned about the end result? The organization culture is also influenced by the open system focus. That is the feedback. How much of a feedback does the system collect, internal and external? It is also influenced by the culture of the parent organization, the power culture. Does it have a boss culture, the role culture? Is it strictly like individuals are having separate roles and individuals are bound to only perform their activities in constraint to their roles? Does it have a task culture? Is it like getting the job done is the most important thing? uh, the organization culture is also dependent on the person's culture. Like, does each people have a genuine interest in the need and development of the workers? Does the organization have interest in the uh, interests of each workers? Does the organization care about the workers' needs and wants? Uh, Next is a set of characteristics that successful organization showcases. One First one is support for cross-functional teams. How much support does the organization uh, provide for the cross-functional teams? How much priority does the organization give for the stakeholder involvement, integrity of the organization, innovation potential of the uh, employees in the organization, innovation potential of the business, the open communication, the culture of communication, the continuous improvement process, the respect for individuals, the project manager's competencies, common is there a common language that a project uses? Project lifecycle has common characteristics. Different organizations adapt their project lifecycle to the organization culture. There are some, though there are some common characteristics like it has a start and end points, and there are there is initiation, planning, and execution. A set of activities needs to be completed before proceeding to the next phase, etc. This slide talks about the project roles that are engraved in each levels that might change according to the organization that you work in. The project executive roles, the main roles are steering. There is a steering team, associate level. There is a sponsor for the project, and there is a chief project officer. Steering team has a set of activities. According to PMBOK, a significant point or event in a project is called as a milestone. This is about sponsor, and as we already discussed, sponsor has a major stake in a project outcome, and he may perform offensive or defensive strategies in a project. Offensive strategy is to position the project well, whereas defensive strategies heard of all the potential difficulties. Sponsor might often be a member of the steering team. Offensive strategies, writing scope overview, defining roles, the basic things like selecting, prioritizing, and resourcing project, establishing project culture, etc. Defensive strategies are like understanding reasons for project failure, determining, uh, uh, facilitating trade-off decisions, insisting on risk identification and analysis, insisting lessons learned are developed, and making sure that improvement points are taken care of, etc. Project control systems are like there is a communication plan, change control system, and a risk management plan. Uh, these are the basic things that we need to run a project. We need to have a very individual specific communication plan for each stakeholder, and if there there is a formula, if there is n stakeholders in a project, there is n into n plus 1 by 2 communication channels that needs to be designed. And